The Celestial Institute of Advanced Xenological Studies floated in the neutral zone between 5 major galactic sectors, a monument to interstellar cooperation that looked like someone had convinced a dozen different architectural philosophies to share the same space and somehow made it work. Which, if you knew anything about galactic politics, was roughly as likely as finding a Gralthorian who didn't smell like fermented cabbage. Yet here it stood, or floated, or whatever the appropriate verb was for a space station that defied 3 different sets of physics simultaneously. Inside its gleaming corridors, the cream of galactic youth gathered to learn, to grow, and to occasionally get into the sort of diplomatic incidents that required 17 forms filed in triplicate and a very patient mediator from the Neutral Species Commission. The Institute prided itself on accepting students from over 200 civilizations, which meant the cafeteria was either a beautiful celebration of diversity or a biohazard waiting to happen, depending on who sat next to whom during lunch. Most species sent their best. The Vrexians sent warriors who could crack granite with their bare claws. The Scytherai sent telepaths who could read your grocery list from 3 rooms away. The Keldorians sent tacticians who could calculate battle outcomes 17 moves ahead. And Earth? Earth sent Kira Vale, who at first glance looked like she'd gotten lost on her way to a library and accidentally ended up in space. She was human, which in galactic terms meant she was approximately nothing special. Humans had joined the galactic community only 40 standard cycles ago. Barely enough time to stop being the new kids everyone whispered about. They had no natural armor, no telepathy, no ability to breathe fire or secrete acid, or do any of the other fun things that made species memorable at parties. They were middling in strength, unremarkable in speed, and their only notable feature was an annoying tendency to survive things that should absolutely have killed them, which most species attributed to dumb luck rather than any actual skill. Kira embodied this mediocrity perfectly, or so everyone thought. She stood at average human height, which made her short by galactic standards. She had dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, brown eyes that seemed perpetually amused by some private joke, and a smile that she wore like a favorite sweater. Comfortable, familiar, and utterly disarming. She attended her classes, submitted her assignments on time, and never caused trouble. The perfect exchange student. Boring, really, if you asked anyone. The problem with assumptions, of course, is that they're usually made by people who aren't paying attention. Thornak Vex Corral was paying attention, though not in the way that mattered. The Vrexian stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor plating that had evolved over millennia on a high-gravity world where everything wanted to eat everything else. He had 4 arms, each capable of crushing steel, and a crest of bone that marked him as warrior caste. His people had conquered 14 systems before joining the galactic community, and they'd only stopped because they'd gotten bored of winning. Thornak carried this legacy like a badge, and he carried his contempt for lesser species even more openly. He'd taken one look at Kira on her first day and dismissed her as irrelevant. Then she'd scored higher than him on the xenobiology exam. Then the tactical assessment. Then the survival protocols test. Each time, Thornak had found an excuse. The tests favored cerebral species. She'd gotten lucky. The instructors were biased toward the novelty of humans. Anything except the possibility that this soft, small creature might actually be competent. The morning everything changed started like any other, which is how these things usually go. The universe has a sense of humor, and it particularly enjoys irony. Combat Simulations, Period 7, Advanced Class. The training hall sprawled across an entire deck, equipped with holographic projectors that could simulate any environment from volcanic wastelands to zero-gravity asteroid fields. Today's exercise: resource extraction under hostile conditions. Teams of 4 would compete to retrieve scattered objectives, while the simulation threw increasingly dangerous obstacles at them. Kira's team consisted of herself, a planari engineer named Zix, whose species looked like someone had given a praying mantis sentience and a tool belt, a Helion diplomat named Oryx, who communicated through color-shifting skin patterns, and a nervous Terralian whose name nobody could pronounce, so everyone called him Snippy because of his crab-like claws. Thornek's team, naturally, consisted entirely of Vrexians. They'd coordinated their schedules to ensure maximum intimidation. It was working. The simulation environment materialized: a collapsed mining facility on a high-radiation world. Exposed conduits sparked with energy. Unstable platforms hung over bottomless chasms. And somewhere in this mess, 6 resource containers waited to be collected. First team to 3 won. Instructor Velthane, a scarred Keldorian who'd fought in the Sector Wars and had the prosthetic limbs to prove it, stood at the control panel. Her 3 eyes surveyed the assembled students with the expression of someone who'd seen too much stupidity to be surprised by anything. Standard rules: non-lethal force only. Gravity set to 0.8 standard. Radiation shielding active. Try not to embarrass your homeworlds. Begin. The teams scattered. Thornek's group moved like a military unit, which made sense because Vrexian warrior training started roughly around the time human children were learning to tie their shoes. They secured the first container within 90 seconds, using raw strength to simply tear through obstacles that other teams had to navigate around. Kira's team took a different approach, mostly because throwing themselves at problems wasn't going to work when the smallest member of your group weighed half what she should in this gravity. Zix analyzed the structural weaknesses in the facility. Oryx coordinated through silent color signals. Snippy used his claws to manipulate controls that had been designed for appendages that could actually grip properly. And Kira? Kira smiled and moved through the simulated chaos like she was taking a pleasant stroll through a park. She didn't seem to be doing much, just staying close to her team, occasionally offering quiet suggestions. But if you watched carefully, and very few people were, you'd notice that she was always exactly where she needed to be. When debris fell, she'd already moved. When energy arcs crackled across their path, she'd found the safe route. When Thornek's team tried to intercept them at a choke point, she'd suggested an alternate path 30 seconds before it became necessary. Luck, everyone thought. The human was lucky. Then the simulation developed a problem. Somewhere in the facility's holographic code, a safety protocol failed. The simulated radiation became actual radiation. Not enough to be immediately dangerous, but enough that the shielding generators kicked into emergency mode, which caused a feedback loop in the gravity generators, which caused one of the suspended platforms to lose its gravitational anchor and begin a very real, very non-simulated fall toward the training floor 60 feet below, with Snippy standing on it. The Terralian's chitinous body was tough, but not survive a 60-foot fall tough. He scrambled backward, claws skittering on the smooth surface, mandibles clicking in panic. His team members were too far away. The platform tilted, momentum carrying it toward the edge of catastrophe. Thornek's team stopped to watch, curious about whether the safety nets would deploy in time. Zix frantically worked his communicator, trying to alert the instructors. Oryx flashed panic yellow so bright it was visible across the entire hall. Kira moved, not ran, not rushed, moved. One moment she was 40 feet away. The next she was in motion, her body flowing across the obstacles like water finding the path of least resistance. She didn't look like she was hurrying, but she covered the distance in heartbeats, each movement precise, economical, perfect. She reached the platform's anchor point just as Snippy lost his grip, launched herself into empty air with absolute confidence, caught his claw with one hand, and used her momentum to swing both of them toward an adjacent platform. They landed in a controlled roll. Snippy was safe. The entire sequence took maybe 4 seconds. The simulation froze. Instructor Velthane's hand hovered over the emergency stop button, which she'd been 1 second from pressing. Her 3 eyes narrowed, all focused on Kira with an intensity that made several students nervous. Kira stood up, brushed simulated dust off her uniform, and smiled at Snippy. "You okay?" The Terralian clicked affirmatively, still too shaken to properly communicate. His species weren't prone to emotional displays, but his entire body language screamed gratitude. "Good reflexes, Cadet Vale," Velthane said, her voice neutral but her eyes still calculating. "Very good reflexes. For a human." "Thank you, Instructor." Kira's smile never wavered. Just lucky, I guess. But several students had seen her face during those 4 seconds, had seen her eyes, and there had been nothing lucky in that expression. It had been focused, yes. Calm, absolutely. But underneath, just for a moment, something else had surfaced. Something that assessed, calculated, and moved with a predator's certainty. Thornek had seen it. And Thornek didn't like mysteries, especially when they challenged his worldview. The simulation ended early due to the equipment malfunction. Kira's team was awarded 2 containers by default for the rescue. Thornek's team kept their 3. Everyone filed out, chattering about the close call, about safety protocols, about whether they'd get to finish the exercise next week. Thornek caught up to Kira in the corridor outside. His forearms crossed over his chest in a gesture that looked casual, but absolutely wasn't. 3 of his teammates flanked him because Vrexians believed in overwhelming force, even in conversations. "That was interesting, human," he said, his voice a deep rumble that made the translator work overtime. "Very fast for your species, almost suspicious." Kira looked up at him, craning her neck because he was literally twice her height. Her expression remained pleasantly neutral. "Just trying to help a teammate, Thornek. That's what we're supposed to do, right?" "Your species is weak," he continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "Fragile, slow, yet you move like a warrior. Strange, yes?" "I work out," Kira said with a shrug. "Core strength, flexibility training, the usual. Nothing special." "Nothing special," Thornek repeated, tasting the words. "Perhaps, or perhaps you hide something. Humans are known for deception." "We're known for diplomacy," Kira corrected gently. "There's a difference." "Is there?" One of his secondary arms gestured dismissively. "You arrive at the Institute. You pretend to be weak. You score well on tests because tests favor the cerebral over the practical. But today, you moved like someone trained, like a fighter, yet your records show no combat experience. Curious. Are you going somewhere with this, Thornek?" Kira's voice remained pleasant, but something in her posture shifted. Relaxed, maybe. Or the opposite of relaxed in a way that looked identical. "Because I have xenocultural studies in 20 minutes, and Professor Kilmore gets cranky when students are late." Thornek leaned down, bringing his face close to hers in what was meant to be an intimidating gesture. "I think you are false. I think you play a game. And I think when real danger comes, you will break like all weak things break." That's a lot of thinking for someone who failed the philosophy midterm. Kira said, her smile sharpening just slightly. Maybe focus less on what I am and more on your own coursework. The corridor went very quiet. Several students who'd been walking past suddenly developed intense interest in the wall panels. Vrexians didn't take well to mockery, and everyone knew it. Thornick's crest flushed a deep crimson. You dare challenge you to the arena? Kira finished, her voice light, almost cheerful. Sure, why not? Sounds fun. More silence. The kind that happens when someone casually suggests something absolutely insane, and everyone's brain needs a moment to process it. The arena was a sanctioned tradition at the Institute, a holdover from the old days when disputes between warrior species needed a controlled outlet. Students could challenge each other to single combat, supervised by instructors, bound by strict rules. It was rarely used anymore because most civilized species had moved past solving arguments with violence, and the warrior species generally didn't argue. They just punched things until everyone agreed with them. Humans had never participated in an arena match. Most species assumed they couldn't survive one. You accept? Thornick straightened, his anger shifting to something like satisfaction. Truly? Sure, Kira said. Standard rules? No weapons, no killing, first to yield loses? Yes. Great. Schedule it with Velthane. I'm free Friday afternoon. She started walking away, then paused and looked back over her shoulder. Oh, and Thornack? You might want to stretch first. Wouldn't want you to pull something. She disappeared around the corner, leaving behind a collection of stunned students and one very confused Vrexian warrior who'd expected fear and got an appointment scheduling instead. News spread through the Institute faster than warp travel. By dinner, everyone knew. By lights out, bets were being placed. The odds heavily favored Thornack, because of course they did. This was going to be a massacre. The only question was how quickly the human would yield, and how many bones she'd break in the process. Instructor Velthane approved the match with a sort of resigned sigh that suggested she'd seen this coming and was already planning the incident report. She scheduled it for Friday at 1600 hours, sent the standard safety waivers to both participants, and made a quiet note in her personal log that humans were proving just as unpredictable as the intelligence reports had suggested. Friday arrived with the kind of anticipatory energy that usually preceded either spectacular entertainment or spectacular disaster. The arena, a circular chamber with force field barriers to protect spectators and medical drones on standby, filled to capacity. Students from dozens of species crowded the viewing areas, chattering in hundreds of languages that the translators struggled to keep up with. Kira arrived wearing standard combat training gear. Fitted bodysuit, minimal padding, bare feet. She looked even smaller in the arena, like a child who'd wandered into the wrong room. She stretched casually, rolling her shoulders, bending to touch her toes, as calm as if she were preparing for a light jog. Thornick entered to cheers from the Vrexian section. He wore traditional warrior harness, which meant minimal coverage over his armor plating and maximum display of muscle mass. All four arms flexed in sequence, an intimidation display that had evolved over millions of years to make predators think twice. He was magnificent, in the way that natural disasters are magnificent. Beautiful, terrifying, and absolutely capable of ruining your day. Velthane stood between them, her three eyes stern. You both understand the rules. First to verbally yield or fall unconscious loses. Permanent injury is prohibited. Lethal force will result in immediate disqualification and criminal charges. The medical drones will intervene if either participant's vitals reach critical levels. Acknowledge. Acknowledged, Thornack rumbled. Acknowledged, Kira said, still smiling. Take positions. They moved to opposite sides of the arena, 30 feet of space between them. Thornak settled into a combat stance that was taught to Vrexian children before they could walk properly. Kira just stood there, hands loose at her sides, weight balanced, looking for all the world like someone waiting for a bus. "Begin," Velthane said, and activated the arena's boundary field. Thornak charged. It was a good charge, the kind that utilized his species' natural advantages: mass, momentum, reach. He covered the distance in 3 bounding steps, all 4 arms positioned to grab, strike, or crush, depending on how his opponent moved. It was a textbook opening, the kind that usually ended fights before they really began. Kira wasn't there. She'd moved left, not dramatically, just a smooth sidestep that put her outside his attack arc. Thornak's momentum carried him past her. He spun, fast for his size, swiping with 2 arms. She leaned back, the strikes missing by inches. He pressed forward, combination attack, high, low, high, using his reach advantage. Kira flowed backward, her movements economical, each dodge using just enough motion to avoid contact. Her expression remained pleasant, almost friendly, like she was enjoying a dance. "Stop running," Thornak growled, frustrated. "Fight." "I'm not running," Kira said reasonably, ducking under another strike. "I'm right here." He lunged, trying to use raw speed to overwhelm her. She spun aside, and as he passed, she tapped his shoulder. Gentle, barely contact. "Tag," she said. The crowd murmured. Thornak snarled, his crest now a furious crimson. He unleashed a flurry of attacks, all 4 arms working in coordination, years of training evident in every movement. It should have been impossible to avoid. The speed, the angles, the sheer coverage of his strikes. There shouldn't have been gaps. Kira found them. She moved through his attack pattern like smoke through a fence, her body bending, twisting, flowing in ways that looked wrong for a species with only 2 arms and an inflexible spine. Except human spines weren't inflexible, not really. Humans were actually quite bendy when they needed to be, which most species didn't realize because humans usually chose not to demonstrate it. She was faster than she should be. Not faster than Thornak. She wasn't going to win any sprint races. But her reaction time, the way she read his movements and responded, the precision of her evasions, it was off. Wrong. Suspicious. And she was smiling. Not the friendly smile anymore. Something else had surfaced. Something that showed teeth. "You're good," she said, ducking under a double-arm swing. "Really good. Your form is excellent. I can tell you've trained your whole life for this." Thornak didn't respond, focusing on trying to land a single hit. Just one. His pride demanded it. "But here's the thing about training," Kira continued, her voice conversational despite the violence happening around her. "Training is preparation for fighting. It's not the same as actual fighting. You know the difference?" She suddenly changed tactics. Instead of evading, she moved in, closing the distance, getting inside his reach, where his long arms lost their advantage. She struck, not hard, not yet. Just quick jabs to nerve clusters, testing, probing. Thornak tried to grab her, to use his strength advantage, but she was never where his hands closed. "Fighting is messier," she said, tapping his ribs in a spot that made his left side spasm slightly. "Fighting is improvisational. Fighting is about reading your opponent, adapting, surviving." She hit him again, harder this time, a palm strike to his chest plate that made a sound like a hammer hitting an anvil. Thornak staggered back, more surprised than hurt. His armor had absorbed most of it, but the fact that she generated that much force... "Fighting," Kira said, And her voice had changed, dropping lower, the humor sharpening into something darker. Is what you do when training ends and the real work begins. She attacked, not wildly, not with rage, with precision that spoke of experience, of muscle memory built through repetition, of knowledge earned through trial and error. She targeted joints between armor plates, nerve clusters, balance points. Each strike was economical, efficient, designed not for show but for effect. Thornak defended, his warrior training kicking in, but now he was reacting instead of attacking. He landed a hit, finally, a glancing blow with his secondary arm that caught her shoulder. Any other species would have been sent flying. Kira rolled with it, absorbed the impact, used the momentum to create distance, and came back in from a different angle. "That's better," she said, and laughed. Actually laughed, bright and genuine and completely insane given the circumstances. "See? You can hit me. I'm not that fast, I'm just paying attention." The crowd was silent now. All chattering stopped. They were watching something unexpected. The human wasn't losing. She wasn't even struggling. She was playing. "You want to know a secret, Thornak?" Kira asked, ducking under another combination. "About humans?" "I want you to stop talking," he snarled, frustration and confusion mixing into something close to anger. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She was small, weak, human. "We're persistence hunters," Kira said, circling now, making him turn, burning his energy. "You know what that means? It means we chase our prey until it collapses from exhaustion. We're not faster than gazelles, but we can run for days. We're not stronger than bears, but we can outlast them. We're not bigger than mammoths, but we walked behind them until they literally died of tiredness. And then we ate them." She was breathing harder now, but not struggling. Just working. Thornak, despite his superior physiology, was starting to show signs of fatigue. All that muscle mass required a lot of oxygen, and he'd been using it aggressively. "Evolution made us endurance specialists," she continued, almost lecturing. "We can regulate our body temperature through sweating, which most species can't do. We can keep going when injured because our pain tolerance is abnormally high. We heal from things that would kill other species because our bodies are ridiculously good at not dying." She struck again, a rapid series of hits that forced Thornak to defend, to move, to use energy. But you know what the really scary part is? Thornak tried to grab her, missed. Tried again, missed. His movements were getting slower, sloppier. Fatigue was setting in. "The scary part," Kira said, her voice dropping to something quiet and cold, "is that we learn to choose. We can be the friendly, diplomatic species that wants to talk and cooperate and find peaceful solutions. We're really good at that. We genuinely prefer it." She swept his legs, actually swept his legs, using technique and leverage to topple someone 3 times her mass. Thornak hit the ground hard, all 4 arms flailing for balance. Kira stood over him, not attacking, just waiting. But we can also be the species that chased megafauna to death, that survived ice ages and plagues and wars, that clawed its way to the top of its food chain through sheer, stubborn refusal to die. Her smile was sharp now, all predator. We can be both. That's the secret. We choose which one we are. Thornak tried to rise. Kira put her foot on his chest. Not hard, just pressure, just a reminder. And right now, just for you, just for this moment, I'm choosing to be the thing that my ancestors were when they looked at something bigger and stronger and decided they wanted to eat it. The arena was silent except for heavy breathing, mostly Thornak's. "Yield?" Kira said. Not a command, just a statement of fact. Thornack's pride warred with reality. He could get up. He probably could. But then what? Fight until he collapsed? He'd seen her move, seen the calculation in her eyes. She'd been holding back. Even now, she was holding back. And the terrifying part was that he didn't know how much. He started. Yield, she repeated, softer this time, almost gentle. It's okay. There's no shame. You fought well. But this doesn't end any other way. And we both know it. Thornack closed all four eyes, took a deep breath. I yield. Kira stepped back immediately, offering a hand to help him up. He stared at it, the same hand that had just dismantled his offense like it was nothing. Then, slowly, he took it. She pulled, and somehow her small frame helped lever his bulk to standing. Good fight, she said, and her smile was friendly again, like a switch had been flipped. You've got excellent technique, really. Your guard on the left side drops a bit when you get tired, but otherwise, solid. Thornack stared at her, trying to reconcile the cheerful girl offering post-fight advice with the predator that had just hunted him across the arena. What are you? Human, she said simply. Just human. Humans are supposed to be weak. No, Kira corrected, her expression patient. Humans are diplomatic. There's a difference. We choose not to fight because we're good at other things, and because fighting is exhausting and messy and usually avoidable. But not fighting doesn't mean can't fight. It just means won't fight, usually. She turned to wave at the crowd, which erupted into noise. Shock, excitement, speculation. The betting market had just collapsed spectacularly. Instructor Velthane approached, her three eyes showing what might have been amusement if Keldorians did amusement. Cadet Vale. That was, illuminating. Thank you, Instructor. Your combat scores in your file are listed as basic proficiency. They are basic, Kira said. Compared to what humans can do, I'm pretty average. Velthane's expression suggested she was reevaluating several assumptions. I see. And you chose not to demonstrate these abilities before because nobody asked? Kira shrugged. And because showing off is rude. My grandmother always said you should be modest about your capabilities until someone gives you a reason not to be. Thornack gave me a reason. Indeed. Velthane turned to Thornack, who was still looking somewhat shell-shocked. Cadet Vex Corral, you fought with honor. No shame in this loss. Perhaps it will prove educational. Yes, Instructor, Thornack said, his voice subdued. Both of you. Medical check before you return to quarters. Standard procedure. Velthane paused, looking between them. And perhaps in the future we might arrange some cross-training. I suspect there's much your species could learn from each other. Over the following days, the atmosphere around Kira shifted. Not dramatically. She was still the same friendly, helpful student. But people watched her differently now. Moved with more care. Spoke with more respect. The kind of respect you give to something dangerous that's choosing to be friendly rather than something weak that couldn't be dangerous if it tried. Thornack, surprisingly, became something like an ally. Not a friend, exactly. Vrexians didn't really do friendship in the human sense, but a respectful rival, someone who'd learned a valuable lesson about assumptions. He started sitting with her at meals sometimes, discussing tactics and training methods. His friends followed his lead, and soon the entire Vrexian contingent treated her like a fellow warrior rather than a curiosity. One evening, about a week after the match, Kira stood at one of the observation ports, looking out at the star field. Earth was visible from here if you knew where to look. Just a blue dot among billions of others. Nothing special to anyone who didn't call it home. Penny, for your thoughts. Zix clicked from beside her, his mantis-like head tilting in curiosity. That's a human idiom, Kira said, smiling. I'm impressed you learned it. I'm trying to understand human culture better, Zix admitted. Especially after watching you fight. Your species is more complex than our briefing suggested. Most species are, Kira said. That's the thing about first impressions. They're usually wrong. Were you always like that? Zix asked carefully. The fighter, I mean. Or is it something humans can learn? Both? Kira considered the question. Humans have always been survivors. It's built into us. But we're also really good at adapting, at learning, at becoming what we need to be. I grew up pretty normal. School, homework, friends, all that. But I also learned self-defense because my parents thought it was important. Studied martial arts because I enjoyed it. Trained in persistence running because it connected me to my ancestors. She turned to face him, leaning against the viewport. The galaxy looks at humans and sees soft skin. No natural weapons, average everything. But they miss the important part. We turned our entire planet into our territory. We went from hunted to hunter. We built civilizations, went to space, figured out faster-than-light travel. We did all of that as the species that evolution designed to just keep going no matter what. That's terrifying, Zix said honestly. Only if you make us your enemy, Kira corrected. We're much better as friends. More fun that way. Less exhausting, too. Is that why your species is so focused on diplomacy? Because you know what you're capable of? Kira's smile turned thoughtful. Maybe. Or maybe we just got tired of fighting each other and decided there had to be a better way. Humans spent thousands of years at war with ourselves, learning every possible way to hurt each other. And eventually, enough of us decided that was stupid. We still have our darkness. Every species does. But we choose, every day, to try to be better than our worst impulses. She looked back at Earth. That's the real human superpower, I think. Not the endurance or the pain tolerance or the adaptability. It's the choice. We can be predators or diplomats, warriors or scholars, monsters or heroes. And we get to decide, every single time, which one we want to be. And which do you choose? Zix asked. Depends on the day, Kira said with a laugh. Today, right now, I choose to be a student who needs to finish her xenobiology assignment before it's due tomorrow, because Professor Krill will assign extra work if I'm late, and I really don't want to write another 10-page paper on Gralthorian reproductive cycles. That's surprisingly mundane. Most of life is mundane, Kira agreed. That's okay. The big dramatic moments are exhausting. Give me mundane any day. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the stars. Hey, Kira, Zix said eventually. Thank you. For what? For saving me during the simulation. I never properly thanked you. You don't need to thank me, Kira said. We're teammates. That's what teams do. Still, you moved very fast. Took a risk. I appreciate it. Zix, I'm human. Risk is basically our species' middle name. We invented extreme sports because normal sports weren't dangerous enough. We have people who jump out of perfectly good aircraft for fun. We created something called parkour, which is basically running through cities using the most difficult route possible because it looks cool. Taking risks is what we do. And yet, you claim to prefer the peaceful approach? We do, Kira insisted. We really do. But if someone's in danger, or if someone threatens our friends, or if someone assumes we're too weak to matter. Her smile sharpened just slightly. Well, then we remember what we are, and we act accordingly. Somewhere in the station, the chime sounded, marking the hour change. Students began drifting back to their quarters, another day at the institute ending. Tomorrow there would be classes and assignments and the usual routine of academic life. The galaxy would continue its normal spin, species interacting and cooperating and occasionally bickering, but mostly getting along. And humans would continue being humans, friendly, diplomatic, helpful, and utterly, completely, cheerfully willing to remind anyone who forgot that they came from a planet that tried to kill them for millions of years and lost. Kira headed back to her quarters, already thinking about that xenobiology assignment. Behind her, through the viewport, Earth continued its orbit. That small blue world that had produced a species peculiar enough to be kind when they could have been cruel, diplomatic when they could have been aggressive, and friendly when they could have been feared. But also, when necessary, absolutely capable of being the thing that went bump in the night. The thing that smiled while it hunted. The thing that chose its nature rather than being defined by it. The galaxy had welcomed humans as the new kids, the soft species, the diplomatic newcomers who seemed so eager to make friends. What they'd actually invited in were the universe's most successful endurance predators. Ones who'd simply learned that cooperation got better results than conflict, but who'd never forgotten how to do conflict when it became necessary. Instructor Vel Thane, reviewing the arena footage for her official report, paused on a frame of Kira's face during the fight. The expression there was clear if you knew what to look for. Focused, calm, patient, and absolutely in control. She'd been handling Thornak the entire time, measuring him, educating him, demonstrating without destroying. Vel Thane had fought in the sector wars. She'd seen dozens of species at their worst. She knew predators when she saw them. And Kira Vale, with her friendly smile and diplomatic nature and preference for avoiding conflict, was one of the most dangerous things she'd encountered in decades. Dangerous not because of what she would do, but because of what she could do if she chose to. And the galaxy, in its comfortable assumption that humans were harmless, had somehow missed that distinction entirely. The Keldorian instructor made a note in her personal log, flagged for the Institute's director. Human students may require adjusted threat assessment protocols. Current classifications underestimate capabilities by significant margin. Recommend observation and further evaluation. Species demonstrates concerning ability to appear non-threatening while possessing combat proficiency that rivals warrior caste species. Proceed with caution and respect. Then she filed the report, locked her office, and went to get what passed for a drink among civilized species who'd learned that underestimating each other was a great way to end up surprised. In her quarters, Kira finished her assignment, sent it to Professor Krill with 3 hours to spare, and settled in for sleep. Tomorrow would bring new classes, new challenges, new opportunities to learn and grow. She looked forward to it. After all, humans were good at adapting. It was what they did. And the Institute, with its hundreds of species and thousands of perspectives, was exactly the kind of environment where adaptation was key. The galaxy would learn, slowly, what it meant to have humans as neighbors. Learn that the friendly smiles were genuine, but not harmless. Learn that diplomacy was a choice, not a limitation. Learn that the soft species from the small blue world carried within them both the capacity for tremendous kindness and the legacy of being the planet's apex predator. And hopefully, the galaxy would learn this through cooperation and friendship rather than conflict. Because humans really did prefer the peaceful approach. But they remembered the other one, just in case. Kira smiled in the darkness of her quarters, comfortable and content. Just another student in just another school, dreaming just another dream. Except she wasn't. She was human, and that made all the difference. The beast beneath the smile slept, but it never disappeared. It just waited, patient as only apex predators could be, for the moment when it might be needed again.